Hey guys, I'm getting ready to do a tire change on my 2017 Kawasaki Versys, and I was trying to figure out a way to get this thing lifted up so I could get the wheels off, and I came up with a solution that I thought might be helpful for other people too. So I'll show you how I'm going to get this thing lifted. So as a first step, get the back end in the air. I think you almost have to have a rear stand to get the back end lifted up. I don't know how you do this without it. I made this stand. I know you can pick them up. I know a lot of guys have gotten them from Harbor Freight for, not a lot of money. You can spend a bunch of money on these stands. If you're interested in seeing how I built this one, I'll leave a link to the video, down below or at the end of this video if you want to check it out. But first step is we need to get the back end lifted and, get the bike vertical, and then we can work on the front end. All right, so the probably traditional way to do this, once you have the back end up, I know they make a couple different types of stands that go in the front. I guess if you have certain kind of bikes, like if you had a dirt bike, you can actually just put a floor jack under there and you can lift it this way, lift it with a floor jack or, even a bottle jack or something. But in this case, on the front of this bike, and I think a lot of bikes, there's really nothing there except for exhaust and the engine. There's no frame to lift on. So they make lifts that go up underneath the triple tree, and it's kind of has multiple pivot points on it, and you can lift up the front end of the bike with that lift. But those things are expensive and definitely not something that I would use very often. So what I came up with is kind of a redneck way to do this. I'm actually going to use a chunk of rope. I'm going to use a piece of plywood that I drilled a hole through, and then I've got an anchor point on my ceiling up here, and right now I just have this, I've got this old school block and tackle right here hanging from it, and that's actually what I'm going to use to lift the front end. And if you don't have a block set up like that, there's probably at least a couple different things that I have that I could make work. I think just a regular, like a cable come along. I've also got I've got a rope puller, which is basically like a come along that has, an endless chunk of rope that runs through it. So there's a couple different ways you can do this, but, or if you have an electric winch, a lot of people have something like that in their garage or shop, that would work too. But all I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna run this rope up through the triple tree. And again, this is the same way if you had a commercially made lift for the front end. The triple tree down there has a hole in the bottom, and so I'm just going to take this rope and I'm going to run it up between the forks and up through so it comes out the top here, and I'll show you what I'm going to do from there. Now the easiest way to do this is probably just to take the rope and sneak it down that hole in the frame there. This particular rope that I'm using actually has a braided loop tied off on it, and so I'm going to use that loop on the bottom underneath, down by the forks. So probably the hardest part of this whole process is I just need to get this rope up through the hole here, and to do so, I'm just going to take a zip tie. I'm going to run the zip tie down there through, and then I'm going to take a little bit of electrical tape and just tape the rope to the zip tie, and I'll pull it up that way. All right, so there's my rope. Get this tape off of here. So now I've got the rope up there. I'm just going to pull that up, and I'm going to put a loop up here and put some kind of a knot that you're going to trust. I'm going to throw a bowline in here because it's easy to tie, and it's a knot that's easy to it's easy to get loose again. This will have, you know, whatever the front end of this bike is, it'll have a good couple 100 pounds hanging on it. So if you ever want this knot to come undone, put something that's going to be fairly easy to untie. All right. So now, again, I've got my chunk of, this is a piece of 3/4 inch plywood, and it's drilled, I don't know, like a 1-inch hole or something through it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my rope loop and I'm going to bring it through, and I knock the corners off this just because you're in here close to your radiator and I don't want to bend up the fins of my radiator. So I'm just pulling the rope through the piece of plywood, and then I'm going to actually double back on top of itself there. So I'm wrapped around like that. There's no way that'll ever come off of there like that. And then I'll just carefully slide this up. I'm going to take you off the tripod here so you can hopefully see a little better. But basically, so there's my plywood, and it's going to pull up into this position here. You can see the hole, the triple tree that's coming through. So it's going to pull. Let me adjust this with my other hand. So there you go. So that's pulled up tight. You can see when I pull, and it's got a nice support place down there. Okay, and I threw a couple bungee cords on the handlebars just to, you know, kind of keep things evened out. So I'm just going to put a little pull on our rope, kind of go up slow to make sure that everything is nice and tight. And I can see that my knot is tightened up nicely there. If you're not familiar with a bowline, it's that knot will never let go. I've actually hung my body weight off a bowline before, so very trustworthy knot. So anyway, there you go. So this plate down here is nice and tight up underneath there. The bike is completely up off the ground, so now I can easily get under there and get those tires off the front and rear. And with the bungee cords on there, that just kind of keeps it a little bit, you know, a little bit more rigid, so it doesn't, you know, so the wheel stays kind of straight. So there you go. Pretty easy process. It doesn't take a lot as long as you have some kind of an anchor spot, you know, in your garage, or heck, you could do it under a tree, really, but probably best to do it in a garage. Easy way to do it. You know, like I said, the rear stand I think is kind of mandatory for safety reasons. I wouldn't try to do it without a rear stand. And again, I'll leave a link below in the video, the stand that I made, or just, you know, you can pick up some cheaper ones too to do the same thing. So now I can get the tires off, get my new tires on, and get ready for spring riding. So hopefully you guys found that video helpful. Do me a favor, if you did, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel. I'm gonna be doing some more work on the bike. I've got an engine guard I'm gonna be putting on. I've got several projects actually that I'm gonna do to this thing. So if you're interested in seeing more Kawasaki Versys projects, subscribe to my channel and watch for new videos coming out, and we'll see you on the next video. Thanks.